Hello, this is Kurt Wallner. It's time to head into the coloring of the overview. Long process that I'm not going to bore you with too much on this episode. Give you a basic idea of how it gets done. The first step is to put in the biggest color, the white of the white walls. Get our trusty light gray pens and have in. Using a dried out light gray pen is the best way to get the shading on the white walls. We don't want to go too far with it. It's really sort of a feeling more than anything else. You throw the thing in there until it gets dark enough and you think that that is as far as you should go. You can't take anything out once you put it in. And this is the first step of the mystery of the overview. One of the drawbacks of doing these videos is that drawing this stuff on camera kind of makes me self-conscious, and putting in the gray is one of those really important things that I just couldn't leave up to chance. And after the camera switches off, one can take one's time and really get in there and figure out exactly what you want the thing to look like. And that has not been a problem with putting in the red of the brick tile roofs over everything, which is the next big color to go in. Get that in there, and then you can start putting in more of the details. Something that's a real trip about the White House is all of the trees. I have gotten better at doing trees, and I think that I'm continuing to make progress. They're interesting to put in. There are a lot of trouble, but I usually fill in sort of like these big puffs of pom-poms with the 3-color recipe and then draw branches to connect everything. And they're kind of based on what's there and kind of not, because you can't see everything from this angle, the angle that we're looking at it at. Then too, there are the inevitable mistakes, and I had a real groaner pair of trees in front of the West Wing that just didn't get done right. These are more like what they would look like if you were looking at them from above and looking straight down at them. But instead, we're looking at them at an angle, and I just didn't work this out. So they had to be mortise cut it out, where you cut a hole in the original render paper, and or you cut another piece of render paper at the same time so that it's the same shape, and then you plug it in there, and then you start with the recipe all over again, only this time you try and draw all the branches the way they're supposed to be. So with everything all rendered in nice, we come to the point where we've all been waiting for, which is the cross-section of the ground that the White House is standing on. How do you find out what that looks like? And for that, I always rely on the good graces of a local geologist. In this case, Kenneth A. Rasmussen, PhD, who is a professor of geology and oceanography at the Northern Virginia Community College. Kenneth was nice enough to walk me through the basics of what is under the White House. We developed a working relationship. I would plow through the material that he would send, and then I would write up what I thought it meant, and then he would critique that via email. Working on this was a curious combination of putting together what I was reading in the historical record about the White House and what Ken knew about the geology of the area, which was a lot. The White House many eons ago used to be a stream. It was an alluvial stream. Most of the ground under the White House is sedimentary in nature, and we discovered that there was a bedrock strata underneath that they dug down to during the Truman renovations. They put the extra basements in, but it was always kind of difficult to discern whether they had dug support caissons that went down into the ground even further than the basement, which is what I ended up drawing. It turns out that they are not there, so I had to remove them digitally later. Then I would start drawing up sketches of what the cross-section could look like, and then I would send it to Ken, and Ken would critique it a little bit, and then I would refine that until we finally had the thing down. And then I took my final idea and distorted that into what I had of the overview and showed that to him. Maybe if it looked like this, and then he finally gave it a pass, and I started inking all of that in. What we end up with is our best guess estimate of what it would look like if you actually sliced the ground under the White House into layers like a loaf of bread. It was fun figuring it all out. Thanks, Ken. This is my buddy Mr. Big, who's making his first appearance in our videos. He sometimes wanders in here and allows himself to be photographed, but most of the time not. The overview has turned out really beyond my wildest expectations. So many interesting aspects to it that are worth looking at really closely, and I'd like to show you some of my favorites. The Situation Room turned out really nicely. It's a very small, crowded space that everybody gets together and talks about national security, but it's right in there. Right above that is the Chief of Staff's patio that was put in by Don Regan during the Reagan years. The Oval Office turned out really nicely too. A lot of detail in a very small space. All the rooms in the residence are interesting and challenging and make me grin with how they came out. But for some reason, I kind of like the way that the red room appears in this thing. The door cut in half and all the furniture and everything. It's turned out nice. The way I chopped up the center section, of course, is meant to be the focus, with the red carpet sticking out from the diplomatic reception room doors and the balconies and the solarium on top and the flag and everything. It turned out really nicely. I think it does still look like the White House, even though it's all cut into pieces. And that, of course, is part of the secret of what we were trying to do. Cut into it, but also make it look like what it's supposed to look like. As far as the East Room is concerned, because when I did the East Room drawing, I wrote down the recipes of how I arrived at all of the different colors, I'm able to replicate those colors for this project. And I think it turned out really nicely. It's very cool. In our next video, we're going to begin working on a close-up of the East Wing, what we know of it, the family movie theater and the First Lady's office. If you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the channel if you would. Until next time, thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.